people have ups and downs all the time, but what my mum has taught me and my 4 sisters is that everyone falls. What defines you is how quickly and how gracefully you get up. And that's the story, because I think a lot of times people see your Instagram version of life, or your LinkedIn version of life, what you share on Twitter, but that's truly just the tip of the iceberg of who you are. We are all rooted by that submerged iceberg of pain, hardship, overcoming, resilience. And I think more people need to see that, because it takes many nights to be an overnight success. And I think it's to shed light on, what success means to different people, but what that journey has been, or the bottom of that iceberg.
This episode is brought to you by CK Lin Mindset Coaching for leaders, entrepreneurs, and high achievers. Having a clear mind will empower you to tap into your true potential and achieve extraordinary results with more ease and freedom. Visit www.talkwithck.com and apply for a free clarity session today.
What would make this podcast a super home run podcast for you?
It would be if it could make a difference in people's lives, if it could inspire people to not give up on what their goals are, what their dreams are, what their aspirations are, because we all face hardships, myself included, but it's how do you overcome them without losing focus of what it is that you're trying to achieve. So if this could help someone continue down their path, that would be brilliant. I think one of the pieces that I feel connected to you about is every time I read some of your content, and this is the great thing about content, you never know the kind of day someone's having. And a small piece, wisdom of any sort could make someone's day or push them in the right direction of where they're wanting to go, even when it feels hard. So I'm hoping this podcast, when people feel like they're experiencing hardship, depending on the day that they're having, this helps them get to the next place and just to continue the good fight to become the best person they want to be.
That's beautiful. So I want to actually bring you a namesake just a little bit, because you had shared with me before we started recording what your name is, your first name and your last name. And you can go into that a little bit, please.
So my first name is Anas, and in Arabic it means humanity. It's actually based on a prayer called Surah Anas, and it's about God's creation and humanity as a whole. And my last name is Ghazi, which means warrior poet fully. So just putting those two together, I was named by my mother. It's a person who's trying to be a warrior of thought, ultimately.
What a perfect guest to have on the Noble Warrior podcast.
Yes, I know. You can't plan these things.
No, it's perfect. It's all perfect. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
And I know that you reach out to me and say, hey, I have a story I wanted to share, right? And I'm so glad that we met. Right. Because right away, there's a resonance.
Absolutely.
Just your name, your presence, your way of being. So tell us a little bit about why your desire to help people overcome hardship. Because everyone has an origin story, right? And here's my core belief. Our biggest superpower, our highest intention, comes from our core wounds. And my desire to empower people to alleviate suffering, to inspire them to really step into the purpose, mostly came from my own journey. When I first started, I was following the status quo. Life should go this way, in a very rigid way. And then throughout the journey of following the path of science and engineering to entrepreneurship to now where I'm at right now, sharing wisdom. One could say, wow, he's been all over the place. But I would say, no, the core through line of my life has been the pursuit of wisdom. I just didn't have the words for that. So share with us a little bit of your origin story of why this desire to share, to alleviate struggle, adversity, hardship.
So there's a couple pieces to that, right? So I think I have to just take it back to my childhood and how I was raised and so forth. So I was born and raised in the UK. My mother is of Indian, Burmese descent. My father's of Pakistani and Turkish descent. And raised in the UK, my parents, both of them come from these phenomenal families of extreme fortitude. Grandfather what's called a jagadar, a landowner, and that's generational, to being one of the first mattressing giants of India, to my father and his family being in Pakistan during the time of the partition, and his family's journey to my father leaving Pakistan for England at the age of 18 to go to school. So I come from this lineage of people who are entrepreneurs and believers and strivers who have done extremely well. Parents got married, moved to the UK, and then we went from being this family of having haves to having a country house in Norwich, England, and all the rest of it, to my father passing away when I was 3, and my mother being a widower at 28 with 5 children. Youngest being 3,
5 children,
oldest being 9. Yeah.
Wow.
So a foreign woman in ultimately a new land that she wasn't a native of. And so we went from having all these things to my mother sewing teddy bears for us and our coats. And, we had a renter in our house because we needed money, to, my siblings and I making samosas for a theme park called Chesington Zoo. So we've seen, my family and I, we've seen the bifurcation of life. Haves, have-nots. And one of my biggest things as a child, I've always been a dreamer. Big time dreamer. I could get lost in my thoughts even as a child. So I think having those aspirations of this is what I want my life to be like. And one of the core values my mother has instilled in all of us is you're not defined by who you are at the moment, because moments to moments change. You're defined by who you are on the inside and where you come from. So we're a very proud family of our lineage, and this idea of a bloodline, it's more so the characteristics that you imbibe as a bloodline. So my mother, I remember the first time we went to her home in India, it's practically palatial. To seeing that...
Palatial, what does that mean?
Palatial, it's like a palace. To seeing how her life was in England, where, we lived in a very modest home and so forth. We're like, Mom, you came from this, you're living like this. And she was like, that shouldn't matter. What does matter is who you are as a person, your character, and your work ethic, and not to be defined by the failures that you have in life, but to come above them. So back to your question in terms of, what's the story to share? It's that. It's people have ups and downs all the time. And I'm going to reference my mom a lot. I'm just going to be honest. People have ups and downs all the time, but what my mom has taught me and my 4 sisters is that everyone falls. What defines you is how quickly and how gracefully you get up. And that's the story, because I think a lot of times people see your Instagram version of life, or your LinkedIn version of life, what you share on Twitter, but that's truly just the tip of the iceberg of who you are. We are all rooted by that submerged iceberg of pain, hardship, overcoming, resilience. And I think more people need to see that, because it takes many nights to be an overnight success. And I think it's to shed light on what success means to different people, but what that journey has been, or the bottom of that iceberg.
So beautiful. Your mom was quite a master teacher for you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Still is, till this day. Place of safety for all my siblings, and we're grown. But till this day, we all speak to my mom every day. We're all connected every day. We are a very, very, very... I actually spoke to my mom on the way here. We're a very close-knit family, and I think fortunate. But that also happens, and I've read a lot of psychology books on this, when a parent passes away, families tend to become even closer. So we've always been like this armada. As my mom would say, we're like 5 fingers on one hand. When you're together, you're strongest. So it's just genetically who we are.
Wow, that's beautiful. Well, but not everyone's so blessed to have such a mother, right?
Right.
So, what a blessing. You had mentioned resilience. You had mentioned grace. So, put myself in a position of my listeners, because it's simple to say, just pick yourself back up with grace. But in that moment, when you're being punched by life, or your adversity or challenges, it's quite challenging to actually embody that, to operationalize that. Right. So tell us a little bit about, how do you move from challenge to grace in that moment?
And I literally just had this happen to me this week, where there was something I'd really worked for, I deserved, and I was very passionate about, and for the greater good, step back from it. And it was hard. I mean, you got a stress headache and all the rest of it. In the moment, I'm like, what the heck is happening? Because there are moments when you get punched in the face that you lose faith in humanity.
Right.
And you're like, how can this be? Do people not have morals anymore? Do people not stick by their words?
Right. I'm a good person.
Yeah, no, but also the environment around you, when people do you the ugly, you're like, what the heck is going on? So when you're in that moment, I think the piece that has worked for me is now just taking time and realizing that when things don't work out, it's in that moment. They're just not working out for this moment. It doesn't impact the rest of my life unless I let it. And so for me, it doesn't take away the sting, but I think now it's been able to, all right, it's no for right now, but not forever. And it's how do I, like the best piece of advice I've ever received is, no matter what, you show up. You show up on the good days, you show up especially on the bad days. So just take that moment away, give thanks for what you do have. And that thanks can be something as small as, I'm thankful for waking up. I'm thankful for having my family. I'm thankful for being in Los Angeles. Just give thanks for even the small things and give that gratitude. And then from there, reassess where you are and get back up. But you have to take that moment. And everyone's moments are different. For me, I've been able to minimize what my moments look like, so I'm able to get up much faster. But it's rationalizing how things happen in life. It's giving benefit of the doubt. It's truly saying, all right, this didn't work out for me right now. What else am I going to do to continue going? And so for me, it's when you fail, which we all do, and I have had multiple failures in my life. As they are happening, they have stung beyond belief, because I've always felt I'm a hard worker. I feel I'm reasonably talented. I've already come from a very difficult upbringing to begin with, my father passing away and my family working super hard. And I think it's also the expectation that in between I always felt like things would get easier as I got older. Life is tough.
It doesn't get easier.
It doesn't. It's just it's having realistic expectations. So for me, it's just you get back up, you think of what you're going to do next, and you do it. Execution is key, and giving gratitude and thanks. And for me, like every day, I have this ritual, and I have to thank my team at WPP. Last year, my team had given me a book for my birthday, and I didn't actually realize what the book was. I would just write notes in the back, so I actually opened up, and it was a gratitude journal. So every morning, I've got a whole spiritual, like I pray namaz, which is prayer for Muslims, and I go through and I do what's called dhikr, which are these like Islamic incantations to sort of center myself. But then I have this, even in my briefcase right now, you'll see, I write 3 things that I'm happy about. Then I put out the intention, or 3 things I'm thankful for. Then I put out the intention for how my day is going to go. So I list out 3 specific things of how I want my day to be. And then there's a motto that I put out there of what is the theme of today going to be. And then at the ending of the day, I go through, before I go to sleep, and I write it down, 3 things that went really well, so I can give thanks for that, and then 2 things that could be better, as almost a goal set. So it's taking this gratitude into my daily life and having intention of what my day is going to be about. Because what I've realized is if I leave it on autopilot, it will become someone else's narrative.
You become reactive.
You become reactive, yeah. And like for me, I've got to own my narrative. I just recently saw a commercial with Serena Williams where it was for Bumble actually, where she was like, if I had asked permission, I wouldn't be here. Not a direct quote, but it's a summation of what she said. And so for me, I'm not asking anyone's permission. I'm just going to go do what I have to do, because I'm the person that I have to live with for the rest of my life. So it's just getting up and having that strength. It's like gratitude is a muscle that you have to continually practice and strengthen. And I think for me, that is what has got me through the stinging failures when I feel like there is injustice that has happened to me or people around me. It's just, all right, this is just for this moment. Let me isolate it and continue going.
For those of you that are listening, Nasir over here just shared something so profound. After years and years of searching and experiencing and journeys, ultimately what I realized, by the way, there's it's called the 5-minute journal. It essentially lay out the format of what you did. Yeah. So that's
that's it.
Perfect.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. So we're spiritual beings with a particular intention. So if we can maintain that's 3 simple things. Well, actually, no, you mentioned a number of few things. What's your intention? What are you grateful for? That's the baseline of how you can make your day as powerful as you can be. You don't need 10,000 different rituals and other things. If you can actually maintain this intention, because what makes us as human beings so special than other animals is our ability to create the intention.
Right.
We have the option to choose how we want our day be.
Right.
Right. How we want to spend this precious time, energy, resource that we have towards the life that truly makes us come alive. One thing I will do on the underline a little bit is that in my own journey, I came from a scientific background, so I tend to relate to things in a very rational way. And one thing that I would do is to poo-poo the ideas of emotions. I would say, all right, I have a shitty day, but my intention is X, and I'm grateful for X. Let me move forward. The underlying theme there was to suppress my emotions, to make my emotions wrong. I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my emotions. One of the biggest breakthrough that I had recently, I want to share this with you as well as the rest of the listeners, is that our emotions is a part of our own relative truth, because that's what naturally arises from us. If we can actually fully feel the emotions of injustice, anger, resentment fully, and integrate that, neutralize that, such that we can become equanimous. Then,
that's quite the term, equanimous.
Right. Well, I learned that term from a meditation retreat of Vipassana.
Right.
The whole idea of so we're digressing a little bit, digressing upon digressing. In Vipassana, we learn the mechanics how Buddha Gautama achieved enlightenment. Just the mechanics, not the religiosity of it, but just the mechanics of it. He said the root cause of suffering is grasping for a positive emotion that we want.
Right.
Attachment. And also the aversion of the emotions that we don't want. Right? So intellectually I understood that, but recently I really come to appreciate this process of actually integrating both the negative emotions as well as the positive emotions. Because what I would tend to do as a human being is to suppress the negative emotions. Right. Feeling angry is bad, feeling guilty is bad, feeling resentment is bad, and therefore I'm going to pretend that they don't exist and just focus on the positive, the gratitude, the joy, the happiness, the love. And I found that to be counterproductive.
Right.
If we can truly actually integrate the two, let's say I feel anger towards a particular someone, a particular issue, and if I can actually integrate the opposite side of that and together I can come back to equanimity, then I'm neutralized and then I can actually operationalize all of my faculties towards the intention that I want, versus carrying these negative charges with me, pretend that it's not there, and then at some point it's going to blow up because someone says something that triggers my intrinsic, my visceral memories of that. Right. But such a beautiful sharing that you did. Thank you so much. So in that case, how do you exercise the muscles? Because you said gratitude is a muscle, resilience is a muscle. You just share with us how you exercise the gratitude muscle. How do you actually exercise the resilience muscle in your case?
A lot of it is reflection. So just going back to this situation that I recently encountered, from the resilience piece, it's also saying, what have I learned? Because we learn every day from different circumstances. So you're always better off from the learning. And for me, I look back and say, what is the good that has come out of this circumstance, and what could be better? And it's just not personalizing it, because I think there's a lot that happens where...
What do you mean by that? Not personalizing?
Not personalizing in terms of saying, I am valued by this moment in time. My value is this failure, or my value is this obstacle, or so forth. And it's looking at that my journey is supposed to be something other than what this is. So there's also this Islamic belief of, what should be good, what is good to you should come to you, and what is not good to you will come away.
Wait, back up, say that again.
What is good for you will come to you, what is not good for you will go away. And so for me, it's this thing of, as humans, we only know so much, and as spiritual beings, I think there's more to that in terms of, I may not I may not have a full understanding that had this thing worked out for me, it may not have been the best thing for me. And I think ultimately it's having this trust in a higher power, that the higher power will take care of me and make sure I'm okay. And I think this is for me where being a Muslim and having that Islamic faith really comes in. And I think that has been a big source of strength to help me and navigate me through life. So I think that's where that piece is. I mean, and for Muslims, we have to pray 5 times a day. So it's definitely a practice piece. So I think it's almost like meditating 5 times a day, 5 minutes each day. So it's 25 minutes of meditation throughout the day, which for me, that helps me with the resilience and of course speaking to my family. And I think the family component is really big, especially as I've gone through my professional career from TransUnion to American Express to WPP to Kantar. It's my family are the folks who I can trust, my mum, my siblings and so forth. And so that has helped me. So I think what has worked for me is having a core group of people who I know will be happy for me when I'm happy, and will be sad for me when I'm sad, but also encourage me to get back to that place of happiness. And I think that's been very important to keep the fight up and to keep the journey moving forward.
Hey listeners, if you're enjoying this podcast and all the nuggets of wisdoms, go to bit.ly/Noble Warrior Review and leave us a 5-star review and tell us what you're getting out of this podcast. This will really help us attract other people like you and share these nuggets of wisdoms to others just like you. Okay, do that right now, bit.ly/Noble Warrior Review. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Confucius said, self-mastery, family, country, organization, and then world.
Right.
So sounds like you have a solid practice around self-mastery, a solid practice around your family. And these are the foundations that allows you to really make the kind of impact you want to make with organizations in the world. Is that an accurate statement?
I would say, yeah, for me, it's always been the family piece from being on the playground. Like, I remember as kids when one of us would get into a fight in the playground in Park Lane Primary School, all of us would jump in.
Really?
It was
all
just,
your sisters?
It was just, you mess with one of us, you've got all of us. And that, and it would be a total fray for the lunch ladies, because there'd be like these 5 kids coming out as one kid. We didn't care if one of us was friends with the person. If that person picks a fight with one of us, it is the 5 of us that you have to deal with. From 9 to 3, we were all in it together. So I think I've been very blessed that I've got that family support. I think the self-mastery, that to me is an evolution. I think I understand myself better now, but I think we're always understanding ourselves because we always evolve as people.
So actually I want to interject real quick about the self-mastery piece, because one of the things we hear a lot from, let's say, Joseph Campbell, Following Your Bliss, or Know Thyself, or Tell Your Own Truth, be authentic. You hear cliches like this all the time, but I would say it's easier to say.
It is.
Tell your truth. Like, tell us a little bit the process of how you have discovered, reveal your own truth to yourself before then you can, live and share with others what your truth is.
Oh goodness, that is a deep question. For me, it is, it comes down to purpose. And I think since I was a young child, I've seen my mum work really hard and struggle, and I've seen my siblings do the same, and I've seen my sisters give up stuff so that I could have it. As the only boy, they would always say, and so I've come up seeing that. So my purpose has always been, to make sure my mum and my sisters and my loved ones, my nephews, are protected, are preserved, and that I could do everything in my power to make sure they're okay. So that is just my mission in life. And everything else, when I think about things that happen outside of that, everything else, then it puts it into perspective. Professional pursuits, material pursuits, whatever it might be, if they work out, it's great. Does it help this goal of what my purpose is to make sure my family's okay? Or if it doesn't work out, I'm all right with that, because then I feel like now I've realized it doesn't impact my purpose. So I think it's come to me over years. I would say in the last 12 months in particular, I've become more self-aware. I've become more grounded. Just recently, I've had a lot of my friends reach out to me. They're reading some of the stuff I've done, and the rest of it, they're like, "Oh, you're doing really well." I was like, "Thank you," but there's always more to go. And there's also a game of optics, right? No one really shares their inner struggle, what you only see, like I said, is the tip of the iceberg.
The glossy version.
The glossy, the Instagram, the LinkedIn version, and so forth. Everyone has a story to be told, and everyone's going through something. And I think a lot of it now is for me putting myself in someone else's shoes, because if I know I've got stuff going on, I'm fairly certain everyone else I'm dealing with has something going on as well, and they have their motivations. And if there are things to overcome, I will work on overcoming them through a different venue, but you have to give people the benefit of the doubt.
Would you say that internal awareness makes you, as well as someone else, a better leader?
It does. I think internal awareness is key to leadership in particular, especially when it comes to like cultural dynamics. And so while I was a CEO of WPP's Data Alliance, I had an entire global team, folks from Japan, India, Indonesia, South Africa, UK, you name it, all sorts of different people with different family structures, different narratives. And so I think understanding myself and having the benefits now of being from a global culture, a global family, just knowing that and how that works and understanding different people's motivations, that was super helpful in growing WPP's Data Alliance into the company that it became. Because I was able to relate to people, I was able to connect with people, all the way from, being from China and being the only child and the pressure that you receive in that, to what your parents expect of you and understanding that, to having a colleague's father pass away, to knowing that you shouldn't be scheduling a meeting during Muharram in Indonesia because no one's going to show up. So a lot of it is understanding yourself and then translating that into business growth.
I'll share my personal journey there. As a trained rationalist, I didn't understand the internal process. That's because I didn't understand my own emotions as it occurred, because I just suppress them or avoid them or pretend that they're not there. I just basically emotions equals bad.
Right.
And as a result of that, I just look at problems as problems, especially around organization.
Right.
I didn't have the empathy or the compassion or how people react to certain things, because to me it wasn't rational.
Right.
And I was wondering, why was my leadership so limiting?
Right.
Why did people not want to come to talk to me?
Right. Yeah.
Why don't people want to work with me? Even though, rationally, I'm, very skilled at solving problems in a very rational way. Not until I met the Dalai Lama.
Right.
He really gave me a glimpse of what compassion feels like. Like, wow, this is what having compassion means. And so it got me curious and about if I want to be a better leader, if I want to impact people more deeply, not just the rational side, but also deeply, on the whole human side, then I must develop my own compassion towards other human beings. And that's really started the journey for me to internal self-exploration, to doing plant medicine work, to really truly realize oh wow, there's such power in the internal space, and really come to peace with that.
I think it's important to also have it modeled, right? I think for me, that's how I learnt it the best way. It was modeled for me as I was going through different pieces. And I mean, I started off my professional career in financial services. And then after 8 years in financial services, I transitioned over into the world of advertising. And I was very fortunate, especially in the world of advertising, for my first boss. Literally as soon as I had started, within 6 months of being at WPP, my older sister got really sick. And my first boss was like, take all the time off that you need. Don't even question it, come and go as you want. So I was very fortunate to see it modeled. And then from there, it was almost like, by seeing it modeled, it was almost like saying it's allowed. Because up until that point in time, I also come from an Asian culture where it's very very logical driven, and almost everyone I know, that the thing to be was a doctor and engineer, and the 4-letter word no one in my family ever says is love. So so I come from that type of background as well. And even though we're empathetic, in the workplace I was always just taught. In university, they don't give you a class on EQ. They just give you, management, finance, all the rest of it. So it wasn't until I saw it being modeled and being a recipient of it and what it did for me in terms of it made me more loyal. Like, I literally was doing partnerships out of hospital waiting rooms, not because I felt the pressure to do it, but because I wanted to, and I felt the loyalty to my boss and to the firm as a result of it. So what I've realized is the more empathetic you are and really understand what people are going through, people will they will return that to you in dividends, because loyalty is such a key thing. When you're good to people, I have to believe, and I've seen it, that people will return it to you by being good to you, by working harder, by wanting to do what's best for the firm and so forth.
I also want to emphasize that the way we're talking about it, it's not so much we're a gamification, trying to like manipulate someone to do something. Because to me, actually,
not at all.
Yes, the outcome is greater, and that's the juice. We are in a human-oriented organization, and the interconnectivity, the how you share, how you provide space for people that you serve with, that's the juice.
Right.
Because otherwise, I would easily just be, programming something, making some tools, and that's that. It's not interesting to me.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it shouldn't be. So the minute you have the intention that it's going to give you an outcome of a person being more loyal, it needs to be more authentic than that. It's that basic principle of treat others the way you want to be treated. And that's it. Just try be a good person, be a good human being. And even so, for my career at the firm has been around developing collaborations and partnerships. And I've prided myself on being a fair business partner, just from a human perspective. And you can even ask the lawyers on our team, where I'm like, hey, if we're asking this of a partner, we need to give it back to them as well. It has to be fair. And there are times, I'll be honest, I've been burnt where that fairness isn't reciprocated from a partner. But you can't win all of them, and I'm okay with that. But I need to know that I can go to sleep at night knowing that I've been a fair practitioner.
Right.
Because I'd much rather be known as a fair practitioner of partnerships and collaborations than being known as someone who is unfair.
Yeah, totally. I mean, ultimately, I love the way you articulate it, because you did it for you.
Yeah.
Right? So you can go to sleep at night. There is a cost.
Right.
Of trying to maximize profit or trying to, get the most out of someone. Guess what? To me, life is a long game.
Right.
And you have a reputation.
Right.
If your reputation is, working with CK, as an example, I feel shitty afterwards.
Yeah.
Shit, no one wants to work with you.
Right.
Maybe this time you get some, some short-term gains, but long-term wise, no one wants to be around you anymore.
Right.
So thank you so much for sharing so generously. So talk a little bit about how do you actually bring that, because you're speaking from an individual person's point of view. You have given, you have received. How do you actually instill that in organizations? Because I would say that that's pretty tricky.
So it's interesting, as I came to Kantar transitioning out of WPP, within a few weeks we had a product launch that I had to lead. And this product, the team had been working on it for months. It was such a large opportunity, and it was so big that no one knew how to tackle it. And so it came in, and literally we had 6 weeks to launch this product, and the product's name is Balanced Attribution. And we had to launch it at Cannes, and there were so many stakeholders involved with the partner. We had over 40 people internally, and a lot of it was just listening to what everyone had to say. And in listening to what they had to say, and then also understanding what is their communication style. So like I had this one member on the team, super smart guy, and his emails, they were on a different level because they were voluminous and proper academic, and they were so long. I was just like, no one's going to be able to read all these emails. So I realized very quickly that the way you scale something like that is you call them. So then I realized that the communication modality was, this is a person who needs to be spoken to on the phone to get the message and distill it. Here's a person who's cool speaking in public environments. It's understanding your team, and just it's that emotional, that EQ ultimately, of knowing how and when people want to be spoken to. So I think it's just understanding and feeling out where your team is and understanding how they want to engage and what's the most effective way to draw an outcome for business. But a lot of it initially is just listening so that you can figure it out. I think a lot of folks, they jump headfirst and like, you do this, you do that. That economy of dictatorship is over. We are in a collaboration economy. And the only way a collaboration can happen is if people felt like they are heard and that you are taking them seriously and you are really making them feel valued and that their contribution plays a role in the final outcome you're trying to bring forward.
How do you teach that to your middle managers or someone who's not you, who has daily prayer, a faith, a strong family background? Because let me actually share this with you. At companies that I previously were at, we tend to want to find people who are like us, similar core values and similar practices, the depth of wisdom, deeper awareness, the EQ, all of that, right? So if you look for someone who's exactly like you, you're not going to find it because there's only one in us, there's one in CK. So then how do you scale that level of depth and awareness?
So this is where, here's a funny truth, right? So this is where being a minority has been helpful because when I started my career, growing up, I never really saw anyone who looked like me in the professional force, and I never had a manager who was of my background either or anything to that nature. So I'm used to dealing with people who aren't like me.
Right.
So that almost has now become it's an asset because what I look for is a skill set, and I also look for chemistry. Do we as people get along? And I'm all right with people from varied backgrounds and differences because, like I said, I've always been different. And now we're lucky we are in a place and time where being different is considered good. But it's just bringing people who are right for the job, but people that you have chemistry with, who you understand, they understand you. And I think that's really important to like and trust the people that you work with, regardless of what backgrounds you've come from. Like I said, like I've led global teams where even though there are commonalities, there's also differences. And I think we as people, we're like Venn diagrams. There's pieces of us that are alike and there's pieces of us that are different. It's just how do you bring that right permutation together to get the best business outcome? Because I don't want people who are all the same, and I think that's why, especially in advertising, that's where we run into big issues with campaigns and so forth, where we have all the same people running a campaign for a client, and we lose a cultural nuance. You need different people to be able to give you different perspectives. So it's just modeling the behavior of the basics, just listen to people, speak with respect, try and drive, drive timely outcomes, continually quantify the financial impact to the business. I think modeling those behaviors is just key, and I think anyone can pick that up regardless of who you are.
I'm going to have a loving challenge for you. So what you just described, the ability to drive outcome, data-driven, these are, to me, out-of-game skills. There's the outer game skills.
Right.
But also a huge part of what we've been discussing so far is the inner game skills.
Right.
The let's use EQ as a big one.
Right.
That internal awareness of your own emotions, your ability to your ability to articulate how you feel about certain things, also feel others, right? So concretize that for us. With the outer game is quote unquote easier to quantify. You look at your resumes, you do some testing, sure. With the internal ones, much more challenging. So how do you, if you could share a little bit of your framework or maybe interview questions, I want to give people something that they can actually filter for. These
so
skills.
I think the first part of it for me has been putting aside ego. You have to be ready to do, no task can be too big or too small. From scheduling meetings on a napkin to get everyone's availability to talking to the President of the United States. You have to be willing to do all of it. And for me, that's been my thing. I've just not been afraid, and I've been very fortunate that I've been empowered to do those things. But so you take titles and all that side, all those pieces aside, you just do whatever it takes. If it comes to you, you do what it takes to make it happen.
So that's one of the inner
skills.
So
it's one of those things. It's not having the ego of, I'm here, so I'm not going to schedule that meeting. No. You just do what it takes to get it done faster. So it's that piece of it. And then the other piece, for me, my inner game has always been, I'm a tactician. I like to get things done. That's why I have a checklist every day.
It's very satisfying.
Yeah.
Check it off, check it off,
But
check it off.
that is what has really, from an inner skill perspective, I like to show at the end of the day, I've done stuff. I've made use of my day. It has been productive towards meeting this goal. So that's the inner piece of, I want to show that I can materially touch, feel, absorb what it is that I'm working on, from it being a partnership with Facebook or Spotify to, helping getting Kantar's positioning in the world of inclusion and diversity, and, partnering with Adweek. I like to see things in real, because that's just my inner game of, okay, I need to be able to point to it. So I think those were the pieces that internally I have been drivers, and then the rest of it has been the wrapper around it. Because for me, I was just talking to our GC in London a few weeks back.
What's GC?
General Counsel.
Thank you.
In London, and was trying to push to get this partnership together, and she was like, you've got the sense of urgency. What's the sense of urgency? I was like, look, I gave my word. And that's the other piece. I was like, I gave my word, I'd get it done by this day. We have to get it done by this day. That's it. It's like, I was like, my word means a lot to me, and for me, when someone breaks their word, that's really hard on me in particular, and because I view the world the way I view myself. So I think it's having those things of just that integrity that I want to get stuff done. If I'm not having any issues cashing my paycheck, I shouldn't have any issues getting the job done either. And it's just that, and then the rest of it is really being able to motivate teams, to hear them out, to speak to them in the way that they want to be spoken, and ultimately drive that business outcome.
Right. So how do you find others who have those core skills, the inner skills that you just talked about?
I don't think it's about finding people who have it. It's drawing it out of people.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Because everyone's, like, same way everyone's a good person, everyone's a bad person. Everyone's got different, we're so multifaceted as humans. It's drawing out those skills because, for example, in terms of getting balanced attribution put together, we worked with this enormous team to get it all the way from our communications and PR's team to launching it at Cannes, all the rest of it. But it was showing that everyone from our project manager onto the product development teams to our client-facing teams, everyone was providing value. Because without them, because literally when the product launched, the email chains internally, it was like we had won the Oscars. And everyone's like, no, you do. And it was great because it was bringing everyone together after months of this, product. We're trying to move it forward, but it was drawing out the best of everyone for that product, for that launch, and how we did it. So I think building this community around each initiative, I'm a huge believer of agile teams. I think that's where I flourish the best, and at Kantar I have the pleasure of working with a whole bunch of agile teams. It's you bring in the right people to do the right things, and then you move forward. So it's showing everyone's value and making them feel special, and I think giving people gratitude goes such a long way. I mean, thanking them, letting their managers and the executive team know that these are the people who have contributed, it goes a super long way.
So let's get tactical even more there. There's many currencies out there, right? There's obviously, so I'm Chinese. When you go to a Chinese company, a way to show gratitude is raising your pay.
Yeah.
Right? But we also have seen that through research, that monetary incentive, it'll only get you so far. Ultimately, to me, it's the extrinsic motivation, like money, like recognition, as well as the intrinsic motivation, like being acknowledged, like, hey, what's your purpose? How can you leverage this company to leapfrog your purpose even more? So, I forget where I was going with this. Give me a moment. How do you operationalize the acknowledgement? Is there a systematic way of doing it, or is it more of an intuitive thing?
It is from when you speak about a launch, you thank the people who made it happen on LinkedIn to
public recognition.
Yeah, public recognition to internally, like sending out a formal email that breaking out the team members and this was their contribution and sharing it with the executive team to anyone you speak to, be like, hey, we did this cool thing and so was amazing. So I mean, just recently we launched this thought leadership that's ultimately going to be rolled out into the industry. And there was a gentleman on the team. I had taken title aside. I had no idea he was an associate at the firm because he is so good. And I'm like, this dude, I was just like, he's brilliant. And there was there's another colleague of mine, and she was phenomenal as well. They just took the bull by the horns. And every time I just check in, I was like, what can we do to help you? And just thanking them. We got them invited to the conference and all the rest of it, where the work was going to be released. It was just, they were so good, but just appreciating them. And I think it's both, right? It's appreciating them from like a holistic perspective. But if someone's done a good job, we owe it to them to also compensate them, because we're not working to, find the meaning of life. We're working to pay our bills, right? So if someone has gone above and beyond, even if it's like a stip increase or whatever it might be, do it, because that is going to help you keep a person happier rather than them leaving and you having to replace them.
Right.
It's that's a much larger cost.
Right.
Versus just in the moment recognize people for what they're doing, both through formal recognition, but also if you can, definitely through compensation as well. It has to be both. It has to be both.
Yeah, it's challenging. I would say it's challenging because our intention is to acknowledge everyone, and at the same time we also have finite resources. Now within that finite resource, then how do you actually do it, allocate it in a way that's most meaningful? Right.
I mean, you can't compensate everyone for every great deed that they do. It has to be significant and a milestone, especially when someone has gone above and beyond. But in terms of recognition and gratitude, I think, words are free. Words are free, and yet they're priceless. It's, those go a long way, and I think it's also giving them more opportunities. Once again, it's been modeled for me where, as long as you can handle it, keep going. As long as you show me results, keep going. Like, you don't need me to stop you. Like, just keep doing that. What I've realized is sometimes people feel insecure when someone else is doing well. Instead of celebrating that, others feel insecure.
Right.
That it somehow detracts from their ability, or that this person may leapfrog them, and all the rest of that.
Right.
But, everyone's path is different.
Yeah.
If you stepping aside or that person doing well, success is infinite.
Yes.
And it means different things to different people. So them moving up doesn't preclude you moving up. It's not like we've got this finite pie where the slivers just change. It's an infinite pie.
Right.
So more power to the person who's doing well. You focus on your thing and do well as well.
Yeah. So what I also hear is you customize to what the person needs.
Yeah.
Let's say if this person is particularly incentivized by monetary incentive, then you will customize it a little bit different.
Actually, I wouldn't say I customize. I think to me it feels quite. I hate to use the blank term universal, but everyone likes
universal.
I'd say I hate to use the term universal because it seems too blanket, but most people like to feel appreciated.
Right.
So to me, that's just a given. And I think if someone has gone above and beyond, then compensate them for going above and beyond, because that is the right thing to do.
Actually, it reminds me of the book called The 5 Language of Love.
Yeah. Yes.
So, and then why I focus on, like, hey, people may prefer different modalities of acknowledgement. Some people may be monetary, some people may be symbolic gifts, something may be more time, something may be more words of encouragement, etc. Right. So, thank you.
No worries.
How did you end up in advertising? Because if I didn't know you, I didn't know what you do, I would say, oh, this guy is probably a coach or a teacher, a master teacher of sorts, because you talked about spirituality very freely, you talked about your relationship with your family, you talked about self-mastery. I would have never guessed advertising. So tell us a little bit about how you choose your profession.
So I've had a very colorful profession in that. I mean, when I was in my early teens, I was scouted and became a print model, and then I became an actor and a voiceover dude, and I did that for about 15. Yeah,
wow.
So I've had a very creative life so far. And then from that, during grad school, the first time around, I taught English to high-risk freshmen which was one of the most
what?
rewarded. I taught English to high-risk freshmen. So it was students who came to Northern Illinois University, where I did my undergrad, on what's called the Chance program. So they were given a chance to give to university, even though the ACT or SAT scores weren't high enough. So then they had these development courses where I was a tutor, and then I began teaching for the LTRE program, Literacy and Education. And it was a super amazing experience where, like, I'd have to teach Shakespeare and poetic devices, which almost felt so, like, it just didn't jive with the student populace. So I changed it. I was like, we're doing poetic devices, analyze a song. And it was just making things more relevant to them. So I taught, and then after grad school, and I got a graduate degree in information systems, while I was also acting and doing all the rest of it. And then I took a year off, and I was acting full-time. Went out to LA for pilot season, all the rest of it, and then I needed insurance, and then health insurance, one of the great pieces of America, and so then I need a job. So I ended up at TransUnion, which is the credit bureau, and one of the first questions I asked the recruiter, I was like, "Is there any program?" Which is, "Oh, not at all. It's more of like a business analyst role." And first day on the job, it's straight up mainframe coding. It's COBOL, it's JCL, job controller language, SAS, SingSort, mining data records and creating models for like, you know, out of the US credit database of like 330 million people. And I was like, even though I had coded, that wasn't natural to who I was.
Yeah.
So here I was coding up models, working late nights, working weekends to get my game back on how to code. I retaught myself coding.
Right.
So I was at TransUnion for 6 years, and I initially started off as a coder in marketing services, where we'd code financial models for banks and credit card companies such as Bank of America, American Express, Chase, and so forth. And then I moved more into a client-facing role where I was leading a team of technologists and data engineers to create custom solutions and omni-channel campaigns for a variety of all of our clients. And I mean, those custom solutions range from creating pieces for capital markets and, you know, looking at loan appraisals and what types of portfolios investment companies should be buying based on the actual loan value to how do you reach different consumers digitally for specific credit card offers and so forth. So I was at TransUnion for about 6 years, and then I got picked up to go to American Express, where I was part of the data analytics and capabilities team. And for a hot minute, I was doing the same type of work. I was doing like return on investment on credit card portfolios, you know, what types of decisions should American Express make. And then within a few weeks of that, I was asked to lead digital transformation for the risk information management division of who should American Express partner with and why, so that they could ultimately increase their card member portfolio to get more of a younger demographic and a more diverse demographic as well. So did that at American Express, you know, working on a variety of different partnerships. And then I'd been at financial services at that point in time about 8 years. And in FS, the way it works is between that 6 to 8 year mark, either you stay in it or you leave. And if once that window elapses, then it feels like you're a lifer. And I was just like, you know, this is good. I mean, American Express, it is the golden standard in the financial services world. And that's what got me to New York as well. And I remember being like loving the firm, but feeling like I could do more. And I watched an episode of Mad Men, go figure, and it was specifically the episode when John Hamm, he pitched the idea of the Kodak carousel, and I watched him do the pitch and the story he told, and I was like, I could do that. I could completely do that. And as Khalil Gibran would say, what you seek is seeking you. Or maybe that's Rumi, my bad. I think Rumi said that. Put it out that I'm going to get into advertising and
put it out there as in
into the universe. Yeah,
okay.
my intention out into the universe. I was like, I want to get into advertising, and spoke to, of course, my sisters, and my one sister connected me with a friend of hers who was a headhunter, who connected me with someone else, and then spoke with this gentleman in December 2012, and I was like, hey, I want to get into advertising. He's like, I don't have anything yet, but I'll let you know. And that was a half-hour conversation in December, and then he calls me back 6 months later. He said, hey, I'm at this firm called WPP, they're looking for a director of partnerships for this newly established firm that they call Data Alliance. Would you be interested? And then I was like, sure. I came into the interview and I met with my boss. And for the first time in my life, I picked my boss rather than the role, which has paid dividends. And now going forward, that's my rule. I need to pick my boss and the chemistry that I have with the boss. And it's a luxury to be able to do that, and I understand that. But I was fortunate to have that opportunity. So I picked my boss, and then that's how I got into advertising. 2 weeks later, I was at WPP.
Beautiful. So in the spiritual community, there's this concept called transmission.
Right.
Or resonance.
Right.
And the whole idea of it is it's not so much the content that your teacher is teaching you per se, rather is how good you feel when you're in the direct physical presence of your teacher. It sounds like that's how you felt when you're around your boss.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, from the, and having that autonomy and having someone believe in you. I started off as a director just in our New York office, and then was given the opportunity to go to Cannes and do top-to-tops with Sir Martin Sorrell as we met, all these people across the industry who were like industry leaders, to growing the firm into, several different continents, and moved my way up along the way as well. Once again, I was lucky to have the appreciation and then also the compensation as it all started to happen. So when, worked with partners such as Facebook and Spotify, like platforms and partners I was personally passionate about. And I also had this added benefit of moving up along the way. And so went from director, global director, managing director to CEO. But it felt like fun the entire time. And then from there, I came to this realization that, I was like, this is cool. Data is great. This is what my career has always been about. But I'm more than just data. And I wanted to really, I love working with clients. I love telling the story. I've got a creative penchant. And that's when I was able to come into Kantar to lead growth from both a partnerships perspective, or as we call them, alliances, to how do we position ourselves in the market? Who do we connect with? What are meaningful initiatives that Kantar should be part of? And I'm getting to do that now, and it's great working with our client teams, establishing what our overall strategy looks like from a client's strategy perspective. What are the business challenges? What are the offers we have? What are the partnerships that should power those offers? So it's been the full end-to-end, and it's just, it's always been fun. For me, my rule is if it's not fun, I can't do it. If I don't feel compelled by it, I'm not one of those who could just go in and do the job.
Put your heads down and grind.
I can't. I have to feel it. I'm all about the feeling. And so if I can't feel it, then it's not for me. And I've been fortunate that I feel it, and every day it's a new opportunity, it's a new challenge. It's think of what hasn't been thought about today, and how do we take the business in that direction. And we've got a couple $100 million business that we're looking at from a partnership perspective that is supporting overall a $4 billion business, which is Kantar.
So let me recap a little bit of your trajectory. So you follow different opportunities, you get into things that you think is going to be fun and exciting.
Yeah.
And then you found mentors / bosses who you have resonance with.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that's missing in terms of looking at your trajectory?
So I would say the way, you can also create resonance, and that's actually one of the big pieces I learned.
Tell us more.
Yeah, so I got to WPP, which advertising company, 200,000 employees, 112 countries, massive, and it's a relationships business. I didn't know anyone, and so I didn't have resonance with anyone outside of my boss. And my boss at the time, he did expend a lot of his political equity introducing me to people. But the way I was able to create resonance with those folks was I was timely in my responses. I came back to them with value add, and I thought it was all very thoughtful. I moved on things quickly, and I was able to show results. So that is what helped create resonance with them as well. Ultimately, these folks became board members at WPP's Data Alliance, and that's where, and from being board members, they've now become my friends. There's still people I connect with. Some of them have gone on to different firms and so forth. But I created that resonance by being quick, being meaningful, and providing value to them. To the point that I remember calling one of the board members at the time. He was on a plane in Mumbai taking my phone call, holding up a plane ultimately because he was willing to have the conversation. But you create resonance by providing value. Yeah, the playbook of this, it's provide value. So there are, and I think we've all come across this, where there are times you're in a meeting and someone is speaking just to speak. There isn't anything new to add. And you're like, great. Like speak when there's something that you're going to add that's valuable. Speak when you can, contribute. And that's all it is. It's just, how can I provide value? How can I help? Even like today, for example, my first calls with our partnerships team of, we've got all these partnerships coming in. How are they going to feed into our different products and services that we have? And it was just literally creating a spreadsheet and just making it very specific. This data partnership is going to help this product and this product. It's very tactical. And then I was like, this is what we're going to share as the unified view. And it was a half-hour call. It was really productive. And I think that's where you have to be. It's about providing value 24/7.
So actually, let's concretize that a little bit, because a lot of people say that I want to provide value everywhere I go, and they don't really provide value. Yeah. The intention is there, which I appreciate. Right. And at the same time, they have no idea what is it to add value to me. So how do you actually concretely add value to your partners, to everyone they interact, to people on the streets? Right. How do you actually do that? Concretize that for us.
Right. So it's ultimately quantifying. I'm going to grow the business by X millions of dollars. I want to have this number of partnerships. I want to amplify the brand by these metrics. I want it's have concrete goals that align with the business goals. And now, how am I going to contribute to them?
Okay.
So if it's business growth, all right. So what's your plan of how you're going to attain business growth? And give me a timeline of how you think you're going to track against that.
I see.
Be very tactical in how you're going to do it.
Okay. So back up 1 second. So I would say, in terms of business value, revenue / profit, right, is pretty obvious.
Right.
But in terms of the individual, in terms of people outside of business,
right.
Let's say you don't work with them anymore. They're no longer part of your ecosystem regarding the Car or whatever business. Then how do you add value there? What's your mental model around adding value beyond the, hey, I have a deal for you, I can add X dollar of revenue, or it can save you some money, like this, beyond the obvious? How do you actually add value?
So a lot of the calls or emails I get is, I would say, one of my largest roles of my personality type is I'm a connector.
Yeah.
So a lot of calls I get from people who are no longer in the direct line of business is, oh, can you connect me with so-and-so?
Right.
So for me, that's the value I can provide. I can connect you with so-and-so, and this is what the ask is. So I'm very specific. I don't like wasting people's time just doing random intros. So it's asking when people reach out to you, it's what is it that they need, and figuring out, can I help them or can I not help them? So I was just talking to my mentee, for example, and I was asking, I was like, where do you see, because she was like, she was having a tough time figuring out what she wanted to do after grad school. And I was like, all right, where do you see yourself in 5 years? She gave her example. I was like, well, that's actually your starting point, because where you see yourself in 5 years. A lot of it at that point in time for her was she didn't feel like she was good enough she wasn't good enough today where she should be in 5 years, when truthfully she was. So, I think the value is different for different people. From a mentee perspective, it was helping give that guidance. From a colleague perspective, it's connecting for new business opportunities. It's just understanding what people want and if you can or cannot help them by providing that value.
Okay, good. Let's talk about peer group. You talked about how important it is for you to have your family structure. That's the bedrock of who you are, right? So what about your peer groups? Who gets, not maybe specific who, but what kind of people gets to be in the inner circle?
Oh gosh, what kind of people? The unfortunate folks would be definitely, of course, my family. Like they're number one. But I'm very, very, very close to my friends from undergrad. I love them to bits.
Why is that?
We grew up together as kids. I went to school out in Northern Illinois University in DeKalb, Illinois, which is about 90 miles west of the city, where the home of Korn, Barbed Wire, and Cindy Crawford. That's where she was born and raised.
Oh, no kidding.
And then the next city over is the Quad Cities in Iowa. So we were in the middle of the golden grains, where you husk corn and all the rest of it. And so, like, my friends from undergrad, there's like a group of us that we've been friends, God, decades now. Decades. And we grew up from being kids. We've been together through life, death, marriage, broken hearts, job loss, you name it. We have really come together. And literally just last weekend, we had our quarterly meetup. We do a Friendsgiving every year together. So these are people who, I mean, they're still in Chicago. And a lot of times my life feels so foreign to a lot of folks. But what I love when I get to meet up with my crew from NIU is that I get to just be myself, and it's this safe space where we just speak about everything. And we are still 18 and 19, and just that energy and the love and the support, and above all the confidentiality of it. Like, I know I can trust these folks. So I'd say that's definitely a group of folks who are just right here for me. Of course, my best friend in the UK, and I've got very close friends in the UK as well who I grew up with. What I've realized is the people I tend to be closest with are the people who knew me before I ultimately came to New York. It feels like, because I think it's because they knew my true essence. And I think in New York I've made some good friends as well, but it's fewer and far between. I think as you get older that generally happens. But I would say it's, my crew from undergrad,
What is your true essence? If you don't mind articulating that.
My true essence, I think I'm still a dreamer at heart. I want to write a book, and so every time I meet with my crew, they're always like, "How's the book coming?" It's being around my family. I like being very laid back and chilling out, and I love riding horses. And
you're a horse rider.
I am. I've been riding for years. I had my own horse for about 6 years.
I wouldn't have guessed.
Most people wouldn't.
That's amazing.
And most people wouldn't even. It's funny. I had a yellow Wrangler at one point in time, which was a stick shift. And most people are like, you do not seem like a guy who knows how to drive a stick shift. I was like, I'm all about stick. So yeah, rode horses. I rode Western. I taught people trail riding.
Wow.
Did all of it. But yeah, so I think my essence is ultimately to experience all of it. But I'm very guarded around the people who I keep closest to me. And I think that's it.
Thanks for sharing.
No worries.
Appreciate that. I also have a loving challenge for you. What if you share more of that?
Of my essence? Or
your true essence, so that you can fully be yourself wherever you go.
So, it's interesting, right? So I came into advertising because I'm a firm believer that you need to do what you and who you are as a person. So when I was in financial services, I did feel a big dichotomy. I was like, I'm this creative dude naturally, but I'm in this very technical field. And I was like, I need to be in a field where I get to be one with who I am. And already coming into advertising has allowed that. And now I'm focusing on writing more articles and all that sort of stuff. So it's that continual journey of just being in tune with myself completely. Like, writing, I would say, is a core to who I am.
You like to write?
I love writing. At one point in time, I was really good at it, and if I have a regret, it would be that I didn't write more, because I always thought it'd be a skill set I'd always have. But like anything, you don't use it, you lose it. So now it's getting back into that writing. I'd love to write a novel one day. I'm working on it, need to get it published.
An actual novel?
An actual novel.
Fiction?
Yeah, a fictional novel.
No kidding.
I've been working on it for the last, 12 years now, but yeah.
Yeah, wow, beautiful. I love it. Well, I mean, you certainly do have the experience to write that, right? You came from a creative background, you got into data, and then very internal aware, and
absolutely.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
No worries.
Is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience in terms of your intention of inspiring them to live a more purposeful life?
I would say, at the end of the day, in life, we all, and I'm still learning as I go, so I'm definitely not a foremost authority or anything to that nature, but I can only just speak from my experience. And from my experience, I'm the best at it.
Yeah.
So from my experience, life is tough and is hard, but it always gets better. I think it's about the mindset. And, it's always just, no matter what, show up. Show up on the good days, show up on the bad days, even if it's difficult, even if that means just getting out of bed, but just show up and put one foot in front of the other to live your best life.
Beautifully said. Thank you, Anas. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
One thing I forgot to do, I'm going to do that right now. I really acknowledge you for being vulnerable, being open about your previous experiences, because I know that this is atypical of your normal interviews. where most people just want the soundbite, they want the tactics, they want, an answer, quote unquote. Whereas you actually were able to, you went there.
Right.
You talked about some of your pain of growing up, of some personal things with your sister, with your mom, and everything. I really, really appreciate it deeply.
No, thanks, man.
That's an extraordinary thing that you did, right? In typical interviews that you did.
Right.
So acknowledge you going there. Acknowledge you for just being flow,
Right.
just allowing to come instead of filtering things.
Right.
And thank you for being here. I'm out of an infinite number of other things that you could be doing. You're here spending time with me.
No, this is good.
Botanical garden.
No, I'm loving it. I'm loving the setting. I'm just loving all of it. I just like it that it's different. And this is good. I think it's all about the experience.
So guys, listen to what Nas has shared. Like, he basically shared with us his playbook of how he navigate his career path, finding his dharma, and cultivate this beautiful, successful career that he's had, and continue on making an impact with the world. So try some of these tactics out and let us know the results of it. I'm sure he and I both would really appreciate
Absolutely.
how this has impacted your life and your career and your life. All right, my friends, have a beautiful rest of the day. Take care.
Hey listeners, if you're enjoying this podcast and all the nuggets of wisdoms, go to bit.ly/Noble Warrior Review and leave us a 5-star review and tell us what you're getting out of this podcast. This will really help us attract other people like you and share these nuggets of wisdoms to others just like you. Okay, do that right now, bit.ly/Noble Warrior Review. Thanks a lot.